before, this is a great resource to have because it kind of outlines what should be happening, right? I have this tabbed, I have highlighters, I take this, it's in my binder. I know many of you have college students, so you're probably not, actively utilizing your binders, but if you have little ones still, I hope you have a binder, and please let this be in your binder because it is so helpful. And I have to oftentimes share in these meetings portions of what's in that resource. And so this is kind of your evidence when you're arguing for some of your rights. I was looking at an article and noticed this framework. And it just kind of goes through this developmental process of the stages of engagement, which includes, how we have this interaction with other families, other communities, other systems, healthcare systems, including education. I was looking at it thinking, if this is the developmental process of how we engage through stages, this conversation about advocacy and action sits right next door to communication. And that's kind of where we'll be going tonight, is looking at how do we communicate our needs and wishes in these meetings when we're arrested by our emotions. But I look at this stage and I'm thinking about, how I have progressed, and you're probably thinking about how you have progressed. And what I've noticed, even with my son being the first one, was I was stuck in a stage. And so if this is our stage of development, when you're stuck in one stage, you can't progress to the next stage. So I spent a whole lot of time in the acceptance phase of this process for him. And then I began to move on to the next, and I was accepting this is what it is. His teachers having a hard time with him. They're saying, get him tested. Okay, I'll get him tested. Then I moved into this phase of fear and stigmatization, whereas before I didn't have that, but it wasn't until I went to the psychologist, and the psychologist said, do not share this report with your child. Oh, my goodness. I'm thinking, wow, what is so bad that's in this report that I can't share it with my child? And that was third grade. From third grade to graduating from high school, he never saw his report. In fact, maybe a couple of years ago, I gave it to him. I was like, have you ever seen this? And he was like, no. And so I gave it to him, but I can tell you that was the worst advice I could have ever received, because I was operating out of fear of what was in it. What does this mean for him? And totally missed the opportunity to engage in other interventions, because the only one that was offered to me was medication. And yes, it worked. Yes, he sat down. Yes, he was listening. No, he wasn't a class clown anymore. But he missed so many other things that he could have gained through other interventions. And he went on and he graduated, but I tell you, he struggled with the executive functioning piece. And those are the things we did not have in his plan, that we should have had in his plan, because yes, he was docile and cooperative, which helped the teacher. And it also kind of helped him understand what was going on, because when he's just kind of in his element, like the children we saw at the opening, he was missing vital information. And so obviously homework was a real challenge for him. So I just wanted to bring you, to this little diagram in terms of what you may be going through. I know you guys are in different phases, but this kind of helped me understand some of the emotion that I carry into my IEP meetings, because in these first two areas, I'm carrying all of the guilt. I'm carrying, the reluctancy sometimes, and sometimes not being heard, sometimes not being felt, sometimes not having team members really be a team member. And I'm carrying all of that with me, which really disrupts my ability to express the needs for my child. And I see this in other parents who also come into our IEP meetings. Sometimes they're real docile. So I'm asking you today, ask yourself really and truly, what's your advocacy style? That first book with the two lawyers about the IEP and your rights, they have a chapter in the very back of the book where they talk about knowing your advocacy style, how important it is to know kind of where you're coming from, because it makes a difference. So asking yourself, are you that polite parent that's very accommodating, go with the flow, whatever the team decides you go along with, or are you that parent It's like a, bull in a china shop, making demands and threats. And these are both extremes, but just asking, there are obviously variations in the middle, but knowing where you sit, when you're thinking about how you're advocating, they're saying is so important. And it is so important as a team member on a lot of cases. How is so important, and it's probably most important in terms of the what. You can find your what out there, rights law, all that information is out there in public domain. You can Google it, you can find out all that you need to know, but no one really talks to you about how do you do this? How do you communicate that? And so your advocacy style really, really does matter. How you ask for something. And they remind us, yes, we are our kids' best advocate, but how we do it affects the outcome for you and the child. And they have this quote that says, out of district placement, kids, it's not about the kid when we're talking about out of district placement. It really is about the parent. And usually it's something that's happened, that the parent kind of enter into that the school, and there's this mismatch of sorts. And so I see a lot of that happening. They get fed up with the school system and they want to remove their kiddos out of that district. And so I see a lot of that out of that school. I see a lot of kids that transfer from school to school to school. We never know when our kids come from different schools or why they come. And then slowly it comes out. But know that when we're having these IEP meetings, and we leave the IEP meeting, our kiddos have to remain in that teacher's class every day. They have to remain in that school every day. And what we don't know, what we don't see is what's happening inside of the classroom. The how of it affects how that teacher affects our kids, how they talk to our kids. If there's an extra resource that maybe they know about, but because of how we showed up in the meeting, they don't share it with us. Teachers have conversations, in the break room. And so before you know it, everybody knows about our child. Everybody knows how we showed up in this meeting. Yes, not supposed to happen, but the reality is it does. And so by the time, if your baby's in the first grade, second grade, or third grade, by the time he gets to the fourth or fifth grade, that those teachers already know about him, that he already has this reputation. And parents, we already have a reputation by the time, and we're wondering, well, why is Miss Johnson treating me that way? Why do I feel like she doesn't like me? It may be something that she's heard 2 years prior. So I'm just saying, how we advocate and how we do and say, it really does matter, at the end of the day. So just kind of keeping that in mind. And also collaboration and communication with our kiddos. I've been inviting my daughter into her meetings since middle school. And I want her to learn how to advocate for herself, because when I am not there, she needs to know how to talk to Ms. Moore in the classroom. She needs to know how to negotiate. She needs to know what's in her 504, that she can advocate for in her classroom. Where I can't be there, she can. And if Ms. Moore's not responding, then that's a conversation we also have. So really how we show up matters. I was listening to, I don't know if you ever listened to, I think Chris Voss Bit the Difference. He's a negotiator, but he has this chapter where he also talks about tone and reason, and was reminded of a study that someone did about customers in a coffee shop wanting to skip line. And based on the customer's tone and how they said it, they were more apt to be allowed to cut. Not only that, if they provided a reason why they were allowed to cut, but seemingly the reason why was not as important as the tone, because they were giving frivolous reasons why they needed to cut, but they were still allowed to cut. So, his thing was tone matters in negotiations. And when we enter into these 504 meetings and our IEP meetings, it really is a negotiation. It really is. It's a collaboration of sorts, but it really is a little dance, if you will. So I want to just kind of remind us, and you may think it's simple, but the quality of family school partnership, it really, really, really is a key predictor of student outcomes. I can't tell you how many students will not speak up for themselves because they believe the teacher doesn't like them based on her tone, based on the fact that she said something in a certain way that now they feel like I can't ask another question. Not only that, that student also observed you answering, or that teacher asking or answering another student. And based on that tone, they're now perceiving it to be the way that you're going to interact with them. So tone matters. I tell my teachers the same thing. How you said it really does matter. And they will tell me all the time, Ms. Reeves, I've said it 3 times, but I guarantee you didn't say it the same way each time. So watching tone, sometimes I just walk down my hallways and listening. I know the yellers. I know our teachers who are calm. And sometimes in my IEP meeting, I will say to assistant principal, the principal, perhaps Mary will do better in Miss Moore's class for next year. Her class is more manageable. Her tone is very calming. Her mood in her room is very calming. I have teachers who have really calm rooms. I even kind of go in and hang out sometimes because their room is just so calming. So just making sure that, we have this awareness in these meetings, and our kids can also have that voice and language. But when we open the floodgate of emotions, it takes over. Our stress system recognizes the threat and it tries to protect us. And we don't even know it sometimes. We get in these meetings and emotions get to running hot. And before you know it, we can't find our words. We wanted to say something, we had it written down, and now we don't have the words because when we're in that stress response cycle, we do not have access to our language centers. And that is so important to remember, especially when our kiddos are there and we're also teaching them how to calm their nervous system and self-regulate in the moment. This becomes very important to have an awareness of kind of where you are in the stress response. Bottom line, know your triggers. And I know you guys have them. And I know you probably know them because I know mine. I know what will trigger me. And one of the very things that I hate is to tell me what my child can't do. Do not tell me what my child cannot do. That'll get me every time. And don't tell me what you can't do for my child. So I don't believe in cookie cutter accommodations. That's why I always collaborate with my children and my students. I don't want to see over and over again the same things in the accommodation, portion of our IEPs and in our 504s. If we're talking, if they need it, they need it, but making sure we connect with them on an ongoing basis and knowing our triggers really help. And for your kiddos, knowing their triggers. So recognizing that negative emotion really does drain our energy. Emotions impact our body impact our emotion. There's this cycle of sorts. So big emotion, it really does, like I said earlier, compromise the language processing centers and our ability to utilize our executive functioning skills. These chemicals are raging through our bodies, and until they dissipate, there's no communication, i.e. no learning in the classroom that's taking place. So a lot of self-regulation is not in the DSM in terms of a part of the symptomology, but know that it does affect everything. So we want to bring in these positive emotions, asking them what brings you joy, what brings you happiness, and knowing that because these positive emotions enhance our energy. So have this conversation, know this about your child, and they can also include those things in their 504s in terms of emotional regulation. I take them through the social emotional learning program created by an OT called Powerfully You, where we go through being a body detective and noticing the sensations in our bodies and what it feels like, giving them vocabulary and awareness so they'll know when they're triggered and what they need to do to down regulate. And so that becomes really, really important. I mean, through the whole musculoskeletal system. What does your head feel like? Your hand, your neck, your shoulders, your jaw, your ears. What do these things feel like when you're triggered? And so we call it a body battery, knowing when your body battery is full and knowing when your body battery is empty. And what are the things that take away from our body battery that leave us depleted? And what are some of the things that we can do to add to our body battery to make us feel more activated? But knowing where you are and what level your battery is on is so important. And so I use this because a lot of my kids have cell phones, so they know when their cell phone battery is dying. So they kind of can relate to the body battery kind of metaphor. But even with my little ones, I'll use how does your engine run? That's another program. Is it running fast or is it running slow like a turtle? So they'll know that, hey, I'm a little off and here are some things that I need to do to kind of get me more regulated. And so at the end of the day, when we talk about accommodations, we also need to know, and we IEPDs and 504s, what our body battery look like. Because at the end of the day, when you're fighting and you're fighting and you're fighting, it can deplete you. And so this image was like, oh my gosh, so perfect. It doesn't go with the program, but I saw it online, Facebook, some Facebook group, and I forgot to credit the artist. But yeah, this was like the perfect, I don't know why he drew her as a lady, but I just thought it was so fitting. I had taken a course at Landmark College and we were talking about emotions, and they shared this article where, the researcher went through these body scans of emotions, and this is what showed up across the board and where people hold their emotion. And I thought, look at anger. I had a kid once tell me he was so angry, and I was like, well, where do you feel it? He was like, in my hands. And because I had this reference in mind, I knew exactly what he was talking about. And immediately he said, I feel like I want to punch somebody. And I was like, got it. Totally understand. So we started to do some things that would kind of down regulate and release some of that energy. But knowing that you do have these sensations throughout your body, recognizing what that is and teaching our kids to recognize what it is as well. I don't know if you are familiar with Dan Siegel's hand model. Perfect example of the limbic system and how it can hijack our ability to problem solve. And we often talk about the amygdala hijack, right? So this is like the perfect educational tool for us and our kids. They need to know when they're triggered. They know when they need to know when their executive brain is offline, that cerebral cortex, and we cannot activate problem solving once that's offline. But if you would go to Dan Siegel's website, it's a great video on there. He goes through it perfectly. And so I would just encourage you to kind of, check him out if you're not familiar with him. So just on a personal note, my daughter, she's still struggling with her emotions, but this is my daughter. Okay. She was going to a performance and they were supposed to wear these blue t-shirts. Everybody shows up in these blue t-shirts, except my daughter and her friend. I don't know if her friend had ADHD or not, but they both, showed up in the same type of uniform. This is not the uniform for the performance. I watch my children. I've been doing it from they were little. I watch them until I can't see them go inside the building because a lot of stuff happens. I want to know what teachers spoke to them, how they spoke to them, if they interacted with my child. I just need to know all the things, right? Just over and above. But I watch them when they go into the building. And this particular day, I watched her and she walked across the street, and all of a sudden I saw her stop and put her hand over her face. And I'm like, what's going on? She wouldn't answer my text. I didn't know what was going on. I thought, well, maybe her allergies are running and her nose is running, but she was crying. And I text her, she wouldn't answer. Then she turned around and gave me a thumbs up. Still don't know what was happening. I'm still thinking she had a runny nose, but then she texted me this picture on the right that it was resolved and they were able to do the performance because the band director gave them a t-shirt. Now I told her this before, when we recognized it. I said, well, just ask the band director for an extra shirt. She couldn't do it because she was so wrapped up in the emotion. She could no longer think, nor could she speak. And so her friend ended up talking for the both of them. So we had this conversation after the fact, how we needed to be reminded of our emotion. But in the moment, you do forget. IEPs, 504s, same things. In the moment, you know what to do, but sometimes when our emotional brain hijacks us, we don't do what we know, which happens to a lot of our babies. So I go through, different things that they can do, mostly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, and tracing their fingers up and down as they're inhaling and blowing out their candle on the out breath, just to kind of regulate that system really fast. That's the fastest way to change our state. And I also teach them about the lazy 8. And I like this one. You can, I think they have a lot of like those tactile strips, those fidgets, those sensory strips. in this form as well, but I like it because we get to shape to the left, because the left side of our brain is where our language centers are said to be located, right? And so when we trace this, we can now activate that center of the brain that responds to language. And so any kind of movement, I would encourage any rhythmic movement, any pattern movement, push, pull, resistive movements, and teaching mindfulness, crossing midlines, activate the language systems. And so I push this as a therapist. And so I want to encourage you to also push this and put it in their IEPs and 504s if they're struggling with emotional regulation. So ultimately teaching them how to respond instead of react. That's the name of the game, right? So making sure we're calm so we can carry on, so we can advocate for them, and then teach them how to advocate for themselves in this process. It's a learning process. But for me, I always start with the environment first, but make sure we have the what, we can find the what, but the how is so important. And teaching our teachers the same thing. And that's my goal. And that's been my mission. And I have this quote because I love it. When a flower doesn't bloom, you fix the environment in which it grows, not the flower. So I'm always looking in the classroom. What can we change about the environment? I'm really big with Pitt Dawson's work. And when she looks at the same thing, what can we change about the environment? What's happening in the environment? That's interrupting this flow of thought, this inattention. We saw in the first slide that a lot of stuff can be happening, and we may be in a position to change it or offer some changes or inquire in the meeting, how are things, especially asking our kids, because they're the one that's going to tell us what's really happening in that environment. And then the physical part of it, is the classroom too busy? Is art everywhere on the wall? Our kids are visually distracted. And so we want to make sure that we're attending to these things as well. The seating arrangement matters. Believe it or not, student teacher match. I have this executive functioning profile that I give to teachers as well, because they need to know what their strengths are and what their weaknesses are. Because when you have a kid that also has the same weaknesses as his teacher, you're probably going to have a problem. And the flip side of that, if he has a teacher that has a strength and has a weakness, sometimes they're a little less patient with those kiddos who have that weak skill. And so knowing that is important, but I also encourage parents to know their own executive profile. Learn what yours is, because it can affect how you interact with your child and how you interact with the teacher as well. And so from the environment, let's get the task. How will we model the task? Breaking it down. Do we need to reteach the task? Now we're getting into the things we're talking about, skill-based. Are we using peer buddies and models in that way? Something that relinquishes the power struggle that often happens between the teacher and the student. Talking with our kids, we'll find that out, because my daughter had a teacher. She did not smile. She did not crack jokes. She was just a hard-nosed teacher. And my daughter did not ask one question the whole year, had an A+ out of the class, but it was through her diligence and hard work, because she just determined that she was not going to ask this teacher any questions. So yeah, knowing your child's profile is so important. Peg Dawson got a free, test on her website. And these are the things our kids need to know. They need to know their executive functioning profile. We need to know ours, so we can start using the language in our IEPs and in our 504s, teaching them the language so they can start asking for what they need. And when they graduate, because we're playing the long game here, not only K through 12, but when we graduate, how do we go to the disability office and ask for what we need? Many times our students won't do it. They don't like to go to campus to let people know they have ADHD. I do an ADHD support group at my university. And I can't tell you how many kids actually have accommodations, but they don't utilize them until it's too late. And so I see a lot of kids losing their scholarships and being put on probation because they won't do it. And they want to do it themselves. And they try as they might, and with all this great effort, but they don't have that support and execution. It's always about, as Barkley say, performance is self-regulation and performance, right? So making sure that they know their executive strengths, and just some things that I use, with my kiddos in terms of fidgets, making sure they have fidgets. Even our college students, make sure you take a fidget with you. Take a water bottle with you so you can suck it through, because it's very calming. Chewing gum for a lot of kiddos my daughter She chews gum. We have gum all over our house. She takes it to school. She chews as a part of her accommodation. She chews gum. I have a whole school that one principal said, yes, they can chew gum, but they must put it in the trash can. So knowing that these babies need to move. If they are not moving, they are not learning. They're going to move anyway. So why not make it socially appropriate, right? And so giving them breaks. Even eye breaks. A lot of our kids have visual perceptual problems. And oftentimes this looks like attention because they're so locked in their iPads and tech that they get this muscular lock where their muscles on the sides of their eyes are tightened, and so you don't have this smooth flowing from left to right. And we need that left to right pattern when we read. We need this pattern up and down when we're doing arithmetic, and so we want to make sure those muscles around our eyes are nice and loose. So making sure we have our eye breaks. And of course, these are all my, tricks and things I pass out to kids during the course of my day at school. But these are therapeutic tools. Don't ever call them toys. They are tools. We have our noise canceling headphones and our seat cushion and our foot fidget. So just making sure they have, and if they need something to, drink out of a water bottle with a spout. And so I'm going through this because I wanted to kind of give you this overview, and then we're going to talk about kind of some of the examples and have a more of a discussion with Ms. Bianca shortly. But I would like to end on this. This is one of my favorite images and quotes about different learners. For a fair selection, everybody has to take the same exam. Please climb that tree. Everybody's a genius, but if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing it is stupid. And I love that. So just remind us that everybody just have a different brain and we all think differently. And our teachers have to know that. Our IEPs shouldn't be cookie cutters. Our 504s shouldn't be cookie cutters. It should be specialized to that child's need. And I'm going to end here and allow you to ask me any questions if you want before Ms. Bianca come and take us further. And I'll stop sharing if that will help.
I was trying to figure out how to raise my hand, but I can't find it. I would like to, I have a comment as well, because I was listening to your recommendations and I thought they were fantastic. I think one of the things that I've discovered just over the years, because my daughter's 17 and was diagnosed when she was 4, um, despite having a 504 or an IEP, oftentimes I find that the teachers are, I love teachers, so I don't want to say this in a way that's offensive because I do love teachers. They resent having to follow what they consider some sort of special accommodations or special protocols with individual children because it makes them have to do something different than what they've always done or what they have been allowed to do for the majority of their students.
Mhm.
My position on that is that what will be helpful and work well for one student, the most challenged student in your class, can do nothing but provide even more support and help and assistance for the entire class.
Mhm.
So if you're doing it for one kid because they have an IEP or a 504, chances are there are some kids in the class who may also have executive functioning challenges or undiagnosed learning differences or ADHD. And by virtue of helping the child that has the most challenges, you probably are invariably helping all of the kids, and certainly any kids that are there who don't have the advocacy, don't have the parents who've, initiated the accommodations process or whatever. But there is just a level, a lot of teachers feel overworked, underpaid, tired, and stressed.
Yeah.
And they simply resent having to, create sort of a separate way of doing
Yeah.
for certain teachers. And to me, I find that to be the most challenging.
Yeah. And you're absolutely right, Tiffany. I think you are hitting the nail on the head because the teachers operate from a place of fairness. They always want to think about fairness and fairness. With that, they want to make sure that they're doing it with fidelity. So a lot of times we give them these IEPs and these 504s, and we don't teach them how. There
Yep.
was a big research about that. They don't know how, and we throw programs with them all the time. We're constantly changing programs. We're constantly changing new processes, but no one ever comes into the classroom and teaches them how. And that's why I love my job so much, because I get to be inside the classroom and I get to say exactly what you just said. If you give them multiple ways of input, it could help everybody. So not just Sally and Johnny, all the other kids who go undiagnosed, because believe it or not, they're 1 in 3 of our babies aren't diagnosed, right? And so if we're looking at statistics in a class of 20 or 3, there are about 3 of them anyway, and the others are undiagnosed and they have other learning challenges. But if you use the model of universal design, I think
Mhm.
teachers are more accepting of that. And so creating
Mhm.
something that the whole class can utilize, and it also doesn't isolate that child. So yes, absolutely. And if that's something that we can carry into our 504 and our IEP meetings, if we can speak that universal language, that is so important. And so when we talk about executive function, if you're familiar with Peg Dawson's work, I love her because she lays it out. She even has a portion in her book where she gives teachers exactly that. This is what you can do inside your classroom. These are learning and the strategy that you need, but she also believes in universal design for learning.
Yeah. So how do you get? One of the things at Tyler's elementary school when she was there, I was such a big advocate working with the counselor and talking with the principal or whatever. They allowed me to start a parent ADHD support group,
Mhm.
and we had a teacher that was, like our staff, our faculty participant, and it it was great support for parents. And one of the things I kept advocating for is having um, some sort of teacher training related to ADHD um, implemented in their, because, teachers have teacher retreat days or
They
whatever
do.
those days are called, where the kids are out of school or whatever,
Yep.
and make all the teachers
Yeah.
aware of not only what is ADHD, what are some of these things, but how they show up in the classroom, things to look for, and then ways that they can create what you were suggesting, which is, something, a more broad-based, um, set of learning or instructional methodologies. Um, and, Tyler left, eventually left the school.
Mhm.
But I just, wanted to say that one other thing I am curious about is when you're in the 504 or the IEP meetings, most parents who, maybe just have had their kids diagnosed or something, or may just be learning that there are accommodations that can be requested. Oftentimes, the school knows that they're sitting at the table with someone who is a lot less knowledgeable about what the laws require of them for the IEP, and also, um, they're just new to the entire process. And so, for me personally, I just feel a little resentful that they're in a room. First of all, you're in this education field, so your goal should always be to do what is in the best interest of the child. But then when you get in those meetings, because they know their budget constraints and they know their resource constraints, they really are less about trying to really get at what they can do creatively or, instructionally to help the child. To me, it seems like they're always trying to get by with offering the least amount of supports, because it takes the least amount of time, the least amount of effort, the least amount of resources. And so you have, just like you said, each kid is different, but instead of seeking out, trying to figure out what exactly is going on with your child, it becomes, oh, well, we just give extra time. And, it's like these standard accommodations that don't really get at what, um, the kid actually needs. And so I'm just, you know, that's it. I was thinking, I don't even know how you get past that. I love those books you recommended.
Yes, please do those. I'm not saying do those, but just because in those, well, the first one by the two lawyers, they have sections in there where they talk about what your school doesn't tell you. They
Mhm.
really break it down. It is
Mhm.
so
Yep. I cannot wait to
enlightening,
read it.
enlightening. I don't want to take up too much time because I do want Bianca got some really good information she wants to share, but you are right on the money, right on the money. Keep pushing, keep fighting, because parents will have voices. And once you push your school to do those things, they will. All
Thank you.
right, my friend Bianca, absolutely. Thank you for all your comments.
I know we have somebody who's raising their hand. Tamika Spencer, do you mind if I just go and then you can comment, or would you rather go right now? It's fine, totally fine.
Whatever you want.
Okay.
You can go and I'll comment later.
Okay, thank you so much. All right, I just have a few slides and then I'm gonna get into my scenarios with all of this. Give me 1 second. Can y'all see my screen? Yes?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to be in presenter, you're not in presenter mode, I don't
Yeah,
believe.
I know. Everybody's, gosh, you would think. Hold on 1 second. Slideshow, present, view, playroom start. I know who I am. Am I good now?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, so my name is Bianca Binion. I am a fourth-year medical student, also getting my master's in public health at the University of Texas Medical Branch in Galveston, Texas. And I'm also an educational consultant. And I'm just going to be talking about advocating in the community, what she just talked about in terms of being at the table. So I'm bringing the perspective of I'm at the table with you all at those meetings. So here's one of my students. Here you go. So this is me. I have over a decade of experience working in the education sector. I started at University of Texas, San Antonio, where I did educational research with 3rd to 5th graders. And then for a year, I worked at the University of Texas, Houston, where I actually was collaborating with clinical psychologists, and they were conducting all these thorough evaluations with children with autism and different disabilities. And one thing that I learned very quickly is that there's like about a year-long wait list to get these very extensive evaluations. And sometimes it breaks my heart to get a call from a parent who needs it right away because of their school, or if they need something super special and they can't get it. And it wasn't until later on that I realized you can go through school district, right? So this was before I started medical school, but I always thought to myself, like, man, here we are. They're calling me and I'm saying, well, we got 6 to 8 months. Do you wanna wait? We have a referral list, but it's only cash pay. That's like $3,000. And these are people who need it now. And then also to your point, there are many college students who use these accommodations for testing. Even in medical school, people get extra time and different things like that. And unfortunately, I do see a stigma in the Black community, especially when it comes to accommodations. And I wish I could just tell them, like, people are fighting, right? Like the CEO of the company's child is fighting to get to this testing, trying to get their ways to get tested so they can get these accommodations. Because it means something different for everybody, right? So just wanted to throw that out there. Now I'm in medical school. I graduate next year. And so I'm an aspiring school-based child psychiatrist, and I really believe in bridging the gap between healthcare and the community. The next slide, you'll see why people call me Coach O, Big Sis Doc. I say I am, thank you for the steps. I say I'm not a mom, but I have a lot of kids because I've worked for 3 years as a policy task force coordinator, and these are one of my students speaking up at the school board meeting. He was actually advocating for equity in the middle schools. His sister has a disability, and at his particular middle school, they didn't have the support for her. versus there's another middle school in Galveston, and we can already assume the demographics there, that had all the supports, all the, the bells and whistles over there. And so we were advocating for middle school realignment. And this is probably one of my proudest moments, seeing our kids advocate for others, especially the other students that couldn't be in that meeting. And so I worked with the school. I worked with the nonprofit sector. Then I weaseled my way into the classroom, and I started seeing what was going on in the schools. Yes, teachers are overwhelmed, overworked. And then I completed a high school internship. This is me. I realized the best way to meet the parents are at the basketball games. This is why some of them call me coach, because I'm a sideline coach. But I was able to have some of these honest discussions with parents, and they were able to see me that, like, I'm in the hospitals, I'm in the classroom, I'm at the school board meetings, and I hear I'm on the sideline cheering on your student. I'm truly trying to be present so that I can be accessible to you and offer you this information and this language that may not otherwise be broken down to, right? You said that, you realize your child needs accommodations, you get to the meeting, you see people who are, they know that they have more education, and they don't take the chance to break it down, right? Same thing in the hospitals, right? You get diagnosis and no one's taking the chance to break it down. They're speaking on this level, and it's like, I'm not in the medical field. I need you to make it plain English to me. Not that we're not educated, but we're not experts in this field. And so I'm very, very big on breaking things down, making sure that parents understand, students understand, and then obviously community engagement. I've been very deep involved in the community. I started getting up positions as being like a sports foundation educational director, where again, I'm just making myself more available to help parents out. I really, really believe in our children's success. And I don't think that, skin color or anything should prevent you from getting the accommodations that you need. And so this is my fixed field. Do not be afraid to advocate. We talk about using collaborative language. How can we work together to ensure my child's needs are met? What strategies have worked for other students with similar needs? What accommodations have you found to be most effective for students with similar needs in your classroom? And how can we tailor those to best support my child? And when I have this table, I really appreciate the fact that you had your daughter with you at the meetings, because I think it's very important for them to be aware, to watch the parent advocating for them, but also to know that they have a voice and they have a say. In fact, in the current position that I'm in right now at a YES prep school, we encourage the kids to be at the meetings, and we help them articulate their personal goal and how to speak up at these meetings, so that they're just not docile and just everything just going over their heads. No, you have a say in the type of supports that you need. And so this is my information. With that, I am going to stop sharing my screen and we can pass this along. And I'm just going to give a couple scenarios of what it is to be me in the community. So for example, let's see, what's one of the things? Okay. There's so many examples in my head, but I'll just talk about one of my first ones, right? Parent came up to me with her middle school child saying that, hey, Bianca, they're going to take her to juvenile detention center. And I said, whoa, wait, what happened? And then she explains to me the child brought a knife to school. And then I look into it a little bit more, and she said, but Bianca, I've been asking for them to check her accommodations. I've been asking for them, the counseling service. I've been doing everything that I can as a parent, and they have her, in handcuffs ready to go. So what I did as an educational consultant advocate, I emailed the school. With her CC'd on it and say, hey, my name is Bianca Opinion. I'm just an education consultant, X, Y, and Z. Can you please send me a copy of her IEP or in her accommodation? Is there a behavioral plan? And so the school scrambling, they actually just sent over a copy from her old school that in the low, and just probably like changed the logo. And so it was frustrating for the parent, because she was just trying to get the answers. And then we realized the counselor didn't communicate with the SPED department, and it was just all, so by the time we got to the manifestation determination meeting, I had all the documents, and I just let them know, the school know that, look, I'm not an educational attorney. I'm just a medical student who's doing this on behalf of the parents that I love and dearly. But if I was an educational attorney, the school would be in trouble. So as much as I get that teachers are overwhelmed and overworked, when it comes down to somebody who's a professional at this and advocating and looking at and piecing apart these little things, the child's need was not met. Yes, the child was disciplined appropriately because she did, there's policies about bringing weapons to school, but on the back end, she was getting bullied. The back end, her triggers were being set off. And then on the back end, nothing was being done about it. The mom went to school multiple times and asked for clarification, right? And so this was just me making the school aware of the situation. And so I've had multiple instances like this. Last week, a football boy, like you said, tone, voice. Some of these students do not respond well to being called out when they already have accommodations. And I don't know if the teachers aren't aware of the accommodations, but again, this just goes back to when I step in, collaborating with the parents, when I step into the meeting, I am advocating for the child and the parent. And I always tell the schools that I want to work with you so we can come to a nice resolution. How can we help support the child? Let's use collaborative language. However, at the end of the day, I can't sit here and just ignore the fact that this child's accommodations are being ignored. We have to address it, right? And so sometimes I see it, parents, who don't know the language, don't know verbiage, they call me, I go, and I was like, it's fun, I'll be the bad guy, I'm just an educational consultant. I created my own company because I didn't want anybody chasing after my degree, working hard for it, right? Created my own company per the advice of my mentors so that I can really help support these parents. I really, 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 really don't think it's fair for their accommodations and things to be ignored. And as much as the teachers get a week, so my idea, right, in a perfect world, teachers get a week before school starts. By that time, they should know who's going to be in their classrooms, right? At least, things change. But at that point, you have a list and you know the kids who have accommodations. That's when they should use the time as a school to address what accommodations. Hey, you see this student, they have this accommodation. Let's talk about how we will go through this, right? Teacher trainings are very, very important. At the school I'm with right now, I mean, one of the teachers, I was like, well, what are we gonna, she's like, no, I got it. I know how to accommodate her. I know how to grade her stuff because she has these certain accommodations. And that was probably, I've been in so many different schools, but that was the first time I heard that. And that's sad, right? Because like you said, there's a lot of these cookie cutter IEPs, they get this and this. No. But our parents don't know that they're empowered, they can actually change it, they can dissect it, they can, communicate with the child like, hey, is this working for you? Is it not working for you? Okay, we can come, let's collaborate, let's send an email, let's go up to the school and let's actually talk about it so that we can help you succeed. We live in a very different generation today, and I know some teachers are still kind of old school with the whole that, oh, I don't want to do that, special extra attention, but it's like, no, it's actually it's federal, right? So I know in Texas, when somebody requests an evaluation, they get 30 days. The district gets 30 days to do that evaluation with the child. So it's not like, no, like, so the teachers or anything like that, but there's policies in place. And so if your school gets caught, thank God they sent Bianco Binion instead of like an attorney. But that's just my feel about it. And I'm just going to open it up for discussions because I want you all to get as much knowledge from me as Mrs. Reeves. And I really, really appreciate all the work that you do because I've learned so much from your talk as well.
Bianca, that was very, very enlightening. Love that. Especially now since we have the whole school to prison pipeline nexus going on, and I see so many girls in that nexus, in that trap. I hate to hear it. We have more police in our schools than we do counselors, but anyone have any questions? I love that.
It's not. No, I don't know. For example, a white child may say, "Oh no, I turned in my homework yesterday. You didn't check it." When a black child says that, it's, "Oh, you're being disrespectful. You're talking back," right? Willful defiance sends you out of the classroom. And we know the more times you're disciplined, it leads into the disengagement of the school system, and it leads into school to prison pipeline. I studied that when I was with that nonprofit, and that's when I really started looking at, and I just was so heartbroken because the policies that are written in school policies are just willful defiance. And it's like, no, define it for me because is going to look different
It
for
is gonna
every
look
child,
different.
especially us. Okay, let me get y'all, let's get your questions in the comments.
Yeah. I see Tamika Spencer. I'm not sure who went up first, but go
I think
ahead.
Tamika Spencer went first. Yeah.
You could take yourself off mute and just
Sorry
ask.
about that. That was trying to find the mute button. No, my question was from the first speech. I wanted to understand when you know the appropriate age to introduce your child to the IEP meeting.
That can happen at any age. I mean, as long as
Okay.
you think they're developmentally appropriate to sit there and hear it. And it may not be the whole meeting, but maybe portions of the meeting. You know,
Okay.
somewhere that you have prepped them on the meeting and you have already introduced, there are going to be these teachers there. Your teacher's going to be there and she's going to be talking about your work. This is what I want you to share. And they may not share, but just because we're giving them the exposure as early as possible. I work with college students and my work is around post-secondary education and self-advocacy. And the research is now saying the earlier, the better. But obviously at 14 years old, you know, that's when we really should start inviting them. Prior to, I think it's prior to it that 14 is that magical age, but 12, middle school, I just think the more experience she has in there watching us negotiate and collaborate at the table empowers her more to do it. So by the time she gets to post-secondary education, they're not intimidated and there's no power struggle anymore, or it doesn't impact their emotions and their ability to communicate with their disability advisor or the instructor, because you can have your accommodations and you know, it's there, but when it comes to the classroom, you don't say anything. They don't say anything, you know, they don't ask for the extra time. They don't go into the quiet. They just struggle so much
Yeah,
because
and
they
that was going to
don't.
be my part too, because now that they're sitting in the meeting and they're hearing this, are they more likely to advocate for themselves when they're in the classroom? Or what have you found, I guess, in that scenario? And that
Yes,
was my part
because
too.
yes, we discussed, and so from a parent standpoint, discuss the IEP, discuss what's in their 504, let them know what's in it, and use their own language. You know, not to say let them read it unless they're old enough, but definitely explain what this means and when can you ask for it? When should you ask for it? If you're struggling with this, ask for that. You know, so it's that kind of introduction. It's a really soft introduction when you know that they're mature enough to handle it. Now, if the meetings are contentious, I wouldn't do it. But at the point where your meetings are pretty much calm and everybody's, you know, and you share with them, eventually I want my daughter to come in to kind of hear portions of this meeting so everybody's prepped for it. And everybody tell them from the bat, use language she can explain, or if it's a he, I'm not sure, but making sure they use language and stopping anybody that's using technical language. And then I always ask my daughter, did you understand what she just said? And my daughter will say no or yes. And then I'll ask, can you say that differently? And so this is just the introduction into not only advocacy, but self-advocacy.
Yeah, no, my son is 13 in the eighth
Oh, yes.
grade, and he's
Oh,
had
yeah.
a IEP since pre-K like 4. So
Okay,
he's
okay.
never sat in the meetings, and it never crossed my mind to include him in those meetings.
Yes,
So
yes, making
yeah.
sure he has the emotional regulation to tolerate. Sometimes there are going to be some things that are said that may not feel good. We're
Hmm.
just trying to get to the bottom of where you need help and what that looks like for you. And then sometimes for my students, even if I have the students that's of age, I will make sure that we send them an invitation. And I'll share with the parents that, yes, your baby should be sitting in these meetings. Are you okay? And of course, whatever they say, I go with. I don't force anybody, but I do strongly encourage them to allow their kiddos to sit in the IEP. And I sit right there with the student and I'm whispering into their ear and I'm asking them the same questions I asked my daughter. Did you understand what she said? And usually my student will be like, no. And so I'll explain to it on the side. And I'll ask, if you have any questions, this is the time you ask the questions, and then they'll raise their little hand up. But it takes them being safe enough to do it and not the team members throwing their power and weight around. And so
Okay.
that's the kind of thing that, you know, I introduce my students to, as well as my daughter.
All right. Thank you.
Absolutely. Anybody else?
Hi, it's Fiona. Okay, so one of my questions was asked about, when we should, take the child in to invite them to the IEP meeting. My other question, okay, I have two questions. One was to follow up with the advocacy. Um, what are some suggestions to get our kids to advocate for themselves? Because like my kids are in middle school, they just started this year, 6th grade. And like my son, he will come home with a lot of homework. Well, not a lot. He'll come home with something that may seem like a lot to me for him, and they have not been given computers yet. And when they are, the computers are going to be staying at school. So he would stay up for hours trying to write a paper. And he's done that, staying up. Then the next day, he didn't sleep because he had on his mind he didn't finish the paper. And I've spoken to him and said, you can ask for extension. And I didn't even, I said, number one, when we went to back to school night, they already explained the first month, because the kids, 6th graders are getting used to middle school. They're going to give a lot of extension, a lot of leniency. And then I also told them in your IEP, you are allowed to ask the teacher for a little more time. It's not that you're not trying your best. It's just at this point, it's not, at certain times at night, it's just not working. You have to have more time. Maybe you can turn in the next day. And he's like, no, I can't do that. I can't do that. So what are some suggestions to help us parents to get the kids to, utilize, like my kids, they know what's in their IP. I explain to them, I don't show them on the paper, but I explain to them, this is in your IP. But I know they're at that age where I guess they're embarrassed and they don't want to.
Yeah, it is. That social piece is so important, especially in middle school, because they don't want to be ostracized. They want to be liked by their peers, especially their teachers. They want the teacher to like them, right? And so oftentimes this can kind of arrest that language sense we talked about earlier. But going back to them and asking them, what's your goal for this class? What's your goal for this assignment? And how do you think we can get there? What are the steps we need to get there? And if part of that is access to technology, he needs access to technology. I don't care what anybody else has or doesn't have, he needs it. And so how do we ask for that? And maybe role playing around that. And for some kids who have that social component, can we put it in an email? Can we construct an email, and send it in an email? I'm struggling with this and that. Do you mind if I turn it in on Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever? I role play a lot with my students. I'll sit there in the classroom and just feed them. Raise your hand, and they'll do this. I'll say, raise it higher. There's a real social component to communication that people don't really realize. And our students with ADHD and other diagnoses like autism often struggle with communication, and we don't really recognize that as much as we should, but it really does impact their ability to communicate.
Yeah, I also say that the email is a great idea, but sometimes like if you need something a little bit more swifter or quicker, know the websites or the ways that the students can communicate directly with the teacher. I know they started in middle school. I know some of my kids have that. And they can send a quick message to the teacher saying, hey, Mr. So-and-so, it's okay if I request extra time per my IEP, right? The teacher has to honor it. And so that way that no one else in the classroom is noticing it. But again, that social component is really, really big with the middle schoolers, even the high schoolers as well. And so I think if there's no like Canva or Skyward or Outlook or anything like that, then yeah, the email is the best way. And then hopefully the teachers accompany like, hey, just tap my child on the shoulder to say, hey, you 2 more days, 3 more days.
Because my kids I am their teacher through that system, whatever learning management system that school but also incorporating guidance counselors. I've done that too.
True.
I've had, students meet with a guidance counselor at the end of the day, maybe on Friday, whatever you think your baby needs, just to kind of get somebody else on that advocacy team, because then that guidance counselor can email the teacher and say, I met with, Simon, and he's struggling with getting this writing assignment in. He's, can you blah, 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 blah. And so having that extra person there inside of the school as your teammate is going to be really important. Even they may not even know each other. Introduce them. Email the counselor and say, hey, my child has IEP. In Ms. Johnson's class, he's struggling. Do you mind if he starts seeing you for sessions? And maybe even writing that in the IEP. I've had that written in 504s as well. Meet with your guidance counselor every Friday. She's going to check behind you. You guys are going to go through the plan. You're going to map it out when you're going to get it done. Love, love, love that. My daughter did that all last year, to the point where this year she's like, oh my God, but she's getting her work on time, but she needed that experience to make it happen and that exposure.
That's a good idea. That's a great idea.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And just a comment, because okay, so the first week of school, my son came home and was like, he does not want to go to resource strategy. And I didn't know what resource strategy was. So I said, why you want to go to this class? He said, because the teacher said this is for kids who are behind in all their work and they need help because they can't do it on their own. And he was like, Mommy, I got a 3.7 last year. I'm smart. I'm not behind everybody else. And I was really upset. So I did, once he sent me the information, I sent an email to the school, because I asked them before summer to let me know who the guidance counselor, who's this and that, because it's in my daughter's IEP, and my son. They never got back to me. I went through the elementary school. Everything fell through. No one would get back to me. So I sent a message, and then I got a call from his case manager and my daughter's case manager. And I explained to his case manager what was said and how he does not want to go back to class, because she made it sound like she's like, this whole group, this class, you guys are like special and you can't keep up with the rest of the kids. I said, my son is very studious. He tries his best. And that is not what I told him. Classes is just for additional, if you need additional help, it's the, but not to put it that way that they're behind and they can't keep up. And the counselor did say she went and spoke to the resource teacher. She said she spoke to her, and she spoke to my son. She said, let me go speak to your son. And she told me, I'm not introducing him. I'm not telling him I'm like a case worker, but I am someone there just in case he needs help, and just will be checking up with him. And when he did come home, he was like, oh, I have a counselor. She's really cool and nice. And, so I was glad that she spoke to the teacher. And then when I did go to back to school night, I made it a point. I stood. She was the last one. I couldn't even get to talk to her, but I finally got to talk to her. I was like, I don't care if I stay all night. And just to find out, like, how are they doing? And to find out, she was, oh yeah, your son is the best. I love him. He is just makes my day. And my mind, like,
You should tell him that. That's that. What
yeah,
I
did.
make sure you share that with him. Yeah,
I
no,
shared
she
it
needs
with
to
him.
share that with him.
Oh, she needs to, yeah. Because
Yeah.
I shared that with him. I was like,
He wants to hear it from her because that's the one he's trying to please.
Yes.
And so, and that's what we talked about earlier when we started talking about the how of it. How in your tone, our kids take that and they run with it and they just kind of ruminate over these comments. And so making sure that she comes back and feed into his system these positive things, he needs to hear from her as well. So good for you. Kudos.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So, ladies, I'm just going to jump in real quick because it's 8:12, and we do want to be very respective of everybody's time. And I will say that all the information that we have gotten from you, Dimitri, and Bianca. It has just been, I don't even know the words to describe it. It has been more than helpful. It has given, more information to have in your toolkit, to our parents to be able to build that. And for you all to still at the same time be able to utilize the information too that we send out to you, because that what we're sending out, that kind of enforces what both Dimitri was saying and what Bianca was saying. And also, I will say this much. I will ask Dr. Walker to jump in and speak very quickly, because tomorrow evening actually is going to be a continuation of what we're talking about tonight. So if you have not registered for that town hall, you really need to. I take that back. I'm not going to use the words you need to, but we encourage you all to really, really register for that. And I don't want to put Miss Dimitri or Bianca on the spot, but you all know we got to have them back. It will be based upon their schedule, what's available to them, but you too absolutely will have to come back. If we have to have our parents sign a petition to get y'all back, we will. If we have to be like Oprah, you'll get a car, maybe not, but we really want you all to come back. So, Dr. Walker, go ahead and jump in and close us out and tell us a little bit about tomorrow night's meeting.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Nailene. We appreciate you. Dimitri and Bianca, oh my gosh, you all hit the nail on the head. I'm so thankful you all had time and you were willing to share, all of these jewels and emeralds that you have learned along the way. What you say in a span of 30 or 40 minutes can be like life-changing for someone else. And so we absolutely are so thankful that that you guys were willing to stop by and have some conversation. And we know that you all are, kind of doing a lot of things in the ADHD community or neurodiverse community. So we really appreciate what you're doing, and just know that it's extremely valuable and it means a lot to our parents as well as to us. Okay, so shout out to Nailene, because she is phenomenal at being able to see talent out there and know how it will propel our parents. So our parents and caretakers. So thank you so much, Nailene. You never cease to like amaze me, and how you're able to bring resources, people, and information together to really empower our parents. Tomorrow, myself, Dawn Fisher, she's a doctor. She is, I say doctor because her work is in anthropology, but it's also crosses the line with so many other things. You all will enjoy her if it was just her by herself. She will be there. I will be there, and Dr. DeFortis, I'm probably saying her name wrong. I know her as Way Me, but oh my God, she's phenomenal too. And these women, they bring a lot of like experience and expertise in their particular fields, but the intersection of what they talk about and what we'll be conversing about tomorrow, how it translates to the classroom and environment, and how we can best support our students from all of those critical ages of development, from kindergarten to first and second grade, third grade, when they get ready to go to middle school, through that freshman year in high school. Some of the things you heard today, there may be a little bit of overlap, but it's definitely informed perspective. We would love to have y'all there. Nailene went to great lengths to get Dawn as mom. Dawn. Nailene will tell you, she's been waiting a year for Dawn. Dawn is she's a very, very busy. Dr. Fish is very busy. But oh my gosh, you all will love her too. You will love Wayme. I'm calling by their first name, so don't be mad at me when they have like their professional titles up there. But anyway, we really appreciate your time. We thank you so much for believing that what we have for you is worth your time, because we know y'all are all absolutely busy. So thank you so much. Thank you all. Thank you all. Thank you all. Hope we see you tomorrow. And then I think there's a lunch and learn tomorrow too. I mean, so this week is just like action packed. But you can rest on the weekend. That's all I have. Back over to you, Nayleen, for those words of departure.
Okay, so we're just going to close out and we'll ask Miss Bianca just in a few words if you want to just do like a very quick summarize. But first, let me say thank you to everybody that's still hanging with us, because we know again that you all have other things that you need to do. Kiddies need to be kitties. I call them kitties. Yeah, your kids need to be getting ready to, go to bed and work and preparation for all that, as well as our speakers too, Dimitri and Bianca. So yeah, so thank you all just for, going the additional time with us. So Bianca, a few words to um, summarize until we see you again, which hopefully will be next year, early next year sometime, and then right after you, Dimitri, too. And I will just say the same thing to you, Dimitri.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you all for inviting me. And yes, she went above and beyond to find me. I appreciate the opportunity. A few words is don't be afraid to advocate. And what you do now for your child, they'll appreciate it in the future. Being present, coming to these type of meetings will help them tremendously. I genuinely care about Black boys and girls. I work in the schools and I'm always visible because I want to provide this opportunity to these students, and I want to crush the school to prison pipeline. I want to make sure that our Black boys and girls are getting educated and they're getting equitable resources, and we're promoting educational equity and just pushing for success in our Black boys and girls, because we need more Black doctors. Okay, so, and also prayers to me because I'm submitting my residency application. So any prayers, graduate next year, will be totally accepted.
I'm good for that one. Thank you. Absolutely. I ditto everything she just said. Nayleen didn't have to go far to search for me, but I do have to put it on my calendar because it's a crazy world I live in. But I absolutely enjoy sharing what I know with parents. And that's my heart of hearts. I've always done parent education. ADHD education, I still work with our college students and doing support groups there. And they've given me so much insight into what happens in K-12 education. And so what we do in terms of advocacy, always remember collaboration, keeping our emotions in check and being sure that we're able to pass that skill on to our babies so they can take that into post-secondary education so that they can graduate. Some of our babies are leaving too early and we want them to graduate. But keeping in mind, when we built this system of education, it was not built by us for us. So we have to challenge some of these systems. And so I just want you to kind of keep that in mind when you go into these meetings.